What's up, everybody? It is Lauren DeLisa Coleman back with you again with the Inside series for Filmio, and we have our final interview for South by Southwest. I've had to track this woman down because she was just so busy during the festival and so much more. I can't wait to hear everything that happened. Please join me in welcoming Dorisha Kai, who is kind of just the mind overall behind a film called Mama Bears, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. So first of all, Dorisha, thank you so much for joining us and allowing me to stalk you via email to make sure that we were able to get you in, during this interview, kind of in compilation that we have for South by Southwest.
Thank you for inviting me, and thank you for stalking me.
You're welcome. Yes, it's good to have you as part of the compilation. So let's start with what Mama Bears is all about.
Well, the Mama Bears are online support groups that help conservative Christian moms support their children, their LGBTQ children. And the film, Mama Bears, is about two moms who are formally conservative because, the process of accepting your child shifts a lot of things, your LGBTQ child. And so one is Sarah Cunningham, and the other one's name is Kimberly Shapley. Kimberly has a transgender daughter, and Sarah has a gay son. And then the third person, who is the one of the lead, I don't like the word character. I like the word collaborator. So our third collaborator is a young African-American woman who's comes from a very conservative religious background. And her journey is about self-acceptance and perfectly exemplifies why we need the Mama Bears.
So thank you so much for that. I don't know if I've really seen this ever captured before. Certainly I'm familiar with it, but haven't seen it captured. So how did this kind of story come to you? And, what was the journey kind of like bringing this really to everybody's attention?
I first learned about the Mama Bears from an article in the Huffington Post about Kimberly and Kai Shapley. Kimberly was fighting for her daughter's right to use the girls' bathroom in their hometown, which was Pearland, Texas. And in the article, Kimberly mentioned that she had found the strength to go from a Texas-based Tea Party Republican to winning an award as LGBTQ Activist of the Year because of the Mama Bears. And she said that there were over 2,000 moms in the online support groups. And so that number stood out to me, and I was very intrigued and started digging and trying to find these groups and see who these women were, because I thought, to make that transition from being a Tea Party Republican to an LGBTQ activist is no small feat. You have to transform your belief system. You have to, you lose friends, you lose family. It's just not easy to make that kind of change. And so I was really inspired by the fact that these women were willing to make those kind of changes in order to love their kids.
So then you just decided to begin the journey and you kind of tracked them down, or how did it kind of go step by step a bit?
I reached out to the organizers of the online support communities and introduced myself and sent an email basically saying, I think that the journeys these women are taking are the hero's journeys. Like if you read Joseph Campbell and he talks about the dark night of the soul and this whole process by which you become a hero or heroic. I just knew that what they were going through was a heroic journey, and that even though I'm not Christian per se, I wanted to tell their stories because I saw them as stories about the transformative power of love. And I think that was really key to gaining entree for me. Is that?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Were they wary of you at first, or what?
I think because I was transparent, right? They were like, and because for me, the story is about love, right? And so that was our connecting point, was that I wanted to tell a story about the power of love. They want the story to be told. And one of the things that I know is that they already had a series of moms sharing their stories. So they already knew the power of storytelling. And so I sent emails to the leaders of two different groups. They sent them out to their community, and the women responded instantly. And
wow, so great.
Yeah, almost to a one, they said, even if you don't tell, here's my story. And even if you don't use me in your film and you don't tell my story, thank you for telling our stories.
So now the other primary subjects, we'll say, of the film, were from the reading of the Huffington Post article, but the other was not. So how did you kind of decide who you were going to include and who you didn't, since you had so many stories? I always find this, very fascinating to kind of hear about, like, the elimination process, if you will, by a documentarian, because I'm sure you want to include everybody, right? So how did you kind of decide who was the most compelling out of so many compelling stories?
Well, Sarah Cunningham was actually coming to New York. I was living in New York at the time. I'm based in Atlanta now, but at the time I was in New York, and she had launched her first Free Mom Hugs tour. And so she was coming to New York. She was going to end the tour at Stonewall Inn. And the day before she ended at Stonewall Inn, she was going to a homeless shelter for the LGBTQ community in Philly. And so it just was a no-brainer that I should shoot her, because she was going to be in my backyard, literally.
Got it.
So, but you shoot with a lot of people, and you don't know if they're going to be the people that you follow or not, but you shoot it just to see, right? And so part of the process of deciding who is going to be the focus of the film is meeting them and talking to them and seeing how open they are, how articulate they are, what their story is, how willing they are to be vulnerable, to share their journey, and how emotionally available and honest they are. Because you can't tell a story about someone who doesn't want to share, right? And so I met Sarah and just fell in love with her, because she's just a open-hearted person and someone who's very transparent. And she was already on a journey to become a leader within this community. Little did she know it. I could see it already that her Free Mom Hugs was going to take off, but this was her first time doing it. And so I just felt like she was going to be someone we needed to follow. So we did. We followed her. But with Kimberly and Kai, I actually was not planning to include them in the film.
Really?
Because I felt like they had a lot of exposure. But later that year, so this was 2017 when I started working on the film. Later that year, the ACLU put out a call for a series that they wanted to do about transgender rights. And I knew that Kimberly was fighting for Kai's right to use the girls' bathroom and for all transgender people to use the bathroom of choice in Texas. And so I pitched that story to them for their series, and they bought it. They licensed it. And they gave me the footage that I shot to use, to repurpose in the feature. And so then it was like, well, they're in the movie.
Okay.
And by then I had met them and seen, I already knew that Kai was one of the most charismatic people I'd ever met in my life, And so I was already intrigued, but I just didn't know if I don't know. I just felt like I said, their story had been exposed. But once we shot with them, and we connected, I think one of the things that I tell documentary filmmakers, especially people who are starting off in the business, and they ask, what's your advice for a young documentary filmmaker? My first advice is find people or stories that you fall in love with. Because that is the only thing that's really going to sustain you over the arduous long haul that it takes to bring a documentary to completion, right? So I fell in love with them. I fell in love with Sarah, and then I fell in love with Kimberly and Kai, and then I fell in love with Tammy. And so for me, that's the criteria. Do I feel like you're articulate, that you're funny? You don't have to be funny, but funny helps, right? That you're open and vulnerable, and that you really want to share your story, and that you have an interesting story.
Right. So amazing. So tell me a little bit about, so you said you started this in 2017. And of course, as you're going along, so many different things happen in the world, and then there's COVID and all that. So how might you say you measured how long this took from beginning to end? Because I'm sure you were interrupted many times, and maybe even working on simultaneous projects. I don't know, but I know you put a lot into this. So COVID affected us because the last person I found was Tammy. I had been looking for a Black mama bear since the beginning of the journey, since 2017, and not having any luck because, as you'll see from the film, a lot of the groups are very white, but it was very important to me that we start having these conversations within the Black community. And so I was looking for a Black mom to include from day one. And I didn't find Tammy until
think so. COVID happened in 2020. I must have found her in late 2018. And we had planned to go back and shoot with her again in 2020. And we had also planned to bring all three characters together at LA Pride in 2020. And none of that happened, obviously. And so we wound up shooting with doing safe, socially distant shooting with Tammy. Which is why you see some shots of her looking pensive and walking around by herself, because we just had to have more footage, but COVID. So it was like, well, what do we do? Right. We shot her playing with her kids. We shot the scene with them doing the puzzle, her walking around her college campus, her at a church. And this was all like, we couldn't send our regular DP. There was a local DP who just went out, and luckily she was living in a garage, so they could just raise the garage door and shoot, with the garage door open. So it made it safer, right? And shoot from a distance. And so. Wow.
Talk about like having to improvise.
Yeah, but we didn't stop. And then for the rest of, COVID, our lovely COVID sojourn, we were editing.
Got it. So then was South by high on your list to be able to submit the film to, or did it kind of come randomly, but you're shaking your head? So no, you were like, this needs to be at South by.
Well, your dream as a documentary filmmaker is to premiere at a top tier film festival. And those are Sundance, South by, Tribeca, Berlin, and a handful of others, right? So if you get into any of them, is a win, right? We did not get into Sundance. And at the time I was upset about it. But in hindsight, we were lucky because Sundance went virtual this year, right? So when we got into South by, we actually pulled ourselves from the other festivals that we had submitted the film to, because Texas is the place where this film needs to be seen, clearly, right? Not only do Kimberly and Kai live in Austin, Liz Dyer, who founded one of the Mama Bear groups, lives in Dallas-Fort Worth. Sarah lives in Oklahoma City. It was just the easiest place for us to bring everybody together. And so we accepted South by Southwest's invitation wholeheartedly, thinking this is perfect, right? And then the madness with the governor of Texas happened. And so it just became like, oh, well, this is divine. This is the hand of the divine saying, here's some madness. You have an antidote. Let's bring these two things together, right?
Got it. So tell me what it was like, because I know that you were massively busy while you were there. Things have just wrapped. You just got back to Atlanta. Give me, the experience of being able to see this with, a live audience, and just more, what you may have seen while you were there, or any panel discussions you may have attended that were inspiring, just the whole vibe. What was it like from your perspective?
First of all, seeing a film in a theater with an audience again, or films in theaters with audiences again, was a joy. I knew I missed it, but I didn't know how much I had missed it. So the first screening that I went to at South by Southwest was my own premiere. And when people started laughing and then crying, I was just elated because I had missed it so much. And to be able to have that communal feeling again, and then have it be with your own film, was just such a blessing, So there was that just like being able to sit in a theater again and laugh and cry and scream and holler and carry on was just wonderful. South by is an overwhelming experience.
This was not the first time you attended, correct?
No, I was there with a short film I had made about Kimberly, that the film that I mentioned that I made for the ACLU, that was there in 2019. So, but I was only there briefly. This time I was there for 8 days, and we had 4 screenings over those 8 days. And I tried to make as many other screenings, but after a while, I just was exhausted.
Well, that's a long time for a conference. And like you said, South by is a massive conference. It's not just a film festival, right? It's many different things. That's why I refer to it as a conference of sorts. And so to stay there 8 days, just that energy alone, the vibrational energy around Austin, that alone, you could just sit inside of your Airbnb or whatever and be exhausted because it's just all around you. So I can only imagine, but I hope you got a lot of, great networking done and just a lot of inspiration, right? That's what I'm hearing from other people who were
and we got to
very
see
tired.
Again. We got to see our friends again, That was also the second blessing that was just so necessary and needed because, we've all been so isolated. To be able to go out to dinner with people that you know and love was just beautiful, I mean, these are things that we took for granted. These are things that were simple, basic pleasures of life that are now luxuries, So
well, tell me a little bit about, I know, but tell our viewers, please, a little bit about your background, because this is not, really your first time at the rodeo, as they say. fitting for Texas, right? You have a lot under your belt. So, don't be humble and shy. Tell everybody how fabulous you are.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I am a graduate of New York University Film School, and I also attended the conservatory at AFI. I have been making films since the 90s. I recently won an Emmy and 2 Webby Awards for the short film that I did for the ACLU. My first feature film, thank you. My first feature film was Chavela, about the legendary, iconic singer Chavela Vargas, that won a bunch of awards and traveled all over the world and took me all over the world. And and now I'm working on a documentary about the co-founders of the Black Voters Matter Fund.
Well, actually, I was going to ask you, what are you working on next? So this should be intriguing. How long do you think that you're going to really be involved in that? Because especially with the midterms coming up in a few months, and then, you could really follow this for the rest of your life, but you got to cut it off at some point, right? So will you go all the way till the next presidential election, or kind of cut it off prior to 2024?
So you asked about stopping due to COVID, and actually I shot the film already in 20.
No. but won't you be tempted to be well, wait, this crazy thing just happened in I don't know, there's October, November, and then you'll be you know what, let me run back out with my camera and
I may update it, but really the focus of the film was what these people did to flip Georgia twice.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Got it.
We went out on the road with them in the midst of the pandemic. So first we started filming with them while they were home, like the rest of us, in quarantine. And then they just decided that, the stakes are too high. This election is too important. We have to get back out there. So they came up with these ingenious ways to do so, which included doing car caravans instead of door-to-door knocking. They would drive through neighborhoods with 20, 30, 40 cars, blaring music, handing out masks and hand sanitizer and gloves and information. And they had QR codes that people could scan to register so they didn't have to touch pens. They held concerts in drive-in theaters so people could stay in their car. They had rallies at drive-in theaters or in parking lots so people could stay in their cars. They just really did the thing, and it was such an honor to be riding on the bus with them. They're what they call the Blackest Bus in America. They also came up, so they normally would travel from city to city, focusing on rural communities on the Blackest Bus in America, which is a tour bus that they have decked out with beautiful imagery of empowered Black people with messages of love and power. But that year, they created a fleet of buses and minibuses so that they could hit as many communities as possible.
Got it. How interesting. So now how can we keep up with you regarding that film and everything else that you're doing? Are you active across social?
I am.
What's the best way?
So I am on Facebook and not Instagram. What's the other one? Twitter. I'm just Darisha Kai, DARESHAKYI. On Instagram, I am Darisha11. I have a website, which is darishakai.com.
And as I always say, we love when filmmakers have a real website. It's a great thing.
I have one for me. I have one for Mama Bears, which is just Mama Bears doc, as in documentary.
Right.
We don't have one for Black Voters Matter yet, but we will. It'll probably just be blackvotersmatterdoc.com because
Good for you, Dorisha.
you have to put yourself out there so people can find you because
Oh yeah, that's for sure.
Money, honey.
That's for sure. That's what I always think when I'm hunting down certain filmmakers, and I'm like, but what if somebody wanted to, I don't know, distribute your film? It's just really fascinating. So you guys listening, always I think about it, and I'm no deep developer myself, but that's why God created Wix and things like that. Anyway, so what do you, I guess, ultimately hope that people take away from Mama Bears?
My heart's desire for this film is that it cracks open people's hearts and minds, people who are struggling to accept LGBTQ people for whatever reason, and shows them that even if you don't agree with how someone's living their lives, their gender, their sexuality, that doesn't mean that you can't love them. Right? Because Jesus said that all the other commandments hung on this one commandment, which was love God and love each other. So love is the first commandment. And that's what I want people to walk away remembering from this film.
Well, okay, I love that, but I thought you just said a few minutes ago that you were not Christian per se. So you take some of the teachings just resonate with you then.
Well, this is a Christian country. You cannot live in America and not be exposed to Christianity, right? And my family background is Christian. I just decided not to be Christian as a child because it didn't make sense to me in many ways. It didn't resonate with me spiritually, right? I am a very spiritual person. And as such, I know a bit about a lot of different forms of spirituality, right?
Got it.
Right. And then during the course of making the film, I've learned more about Christianity than I ever knew.
Well, I think it's just, great that you have hung in there, that you had this film premiere at South by, and I just want to, congratulate you again. I can't wait to see what happens next. And anything else you want to add before we wrap, Dorisha?
Well, people can, if they want to see the film, we've added a screenings list tab. We've added a screenings tab to our website. So we were already booked in a lot of film festivals, and as they announce, we will announce as well. So
that's great.
Find where.
Well, and I guess the next major one coming up, and no disrespect to any other festivals, but will be Tribeca. So maybe during that you'll be, I don't know.
Well, we won't be in Tribeca because they only take world premieres, and we've already premiered. But for example, this weekend we're screening in a little festival called The Thin Line in Denton, Texas, and we're already booked in. I'm trying to remember who has announced because they don't like it if you tell
before. Yeah. It's got to be the whole reveal, as always.
Exactly. But yeah, we're out there, and so the ones that have announced are on our website, and people can just go to mamabearsdoc.com.
That's great.
And some of them are having hybrids, so there's the in-person component, and they're also streaming.
Yeah.
Right. So they can see it online if they can't get to a theater. Yeah,
I like that hybrid offering a lot because some people still don't feel comfortable being out and about, but want to see the film and can oftentimes be great champions for a film such as Mama Bears, right? So
the other thing I'd like to say is that we're going to come to some community near you within the next year or two because we have a very robust impact campaign for this film, and our goal is out there into churches, into community centers, where we can have some serious dialogues about LGBTQ inclusion and acceptance.
Now, have you actually created all that yourself? Do you have a larger team? I'm curious about as you said, the impact kind of campaigns, because some documentaries have them, some don't. I feel that most don't. When you see those that do, they really, really go for it. How do you kind of decide that? And I don't know, how far in advance do you really start thinking about that? So you said churches and schools, but what are some of the other elements? And are you really calling XYZ church, church by church, school by school to say, would you like to do XYZ with us? How do you kind of approach that in your world?
Well, so I've been thinking about the impact campaign since I started thinking about the film. The first person I told about the idea of making this film, even before it was firm in my mind, was a dear friend of mine who burst into tears as soon as I mentioned the Mama Bears. because his mom had rejected him because she was a Jehovah's Witness when he came out. When he came out, she stopped talking to him for a couple of years, right?
Yeah, that particular faith is really they're not joking. Like it's
Right.
just no.
Very strict. So
Yes.
so instantly I knew the impact that the film could have. Just knowing about the existence of these moms, it could, bring people to tears, right? And so since then, I've been thinking about, well, what, you're going to make this film. What are you going to do with this film?
Right.
Shift the conversation. And like I said, crack open people's hearts and minds to greater love, right? And so we have a plan, but now we are in the process of finding the actual people to implement it. And we're not trying to reinvent the wheel because there've been other films that deal with this similar subject matter. I don't think there's been a film that specifically focused on the parents. And I think that's what's unique about Mama Bears, is that it focuses on the parents of LGBTQ people and their relationships with their children. But as such, there have been films about LGBTQ inclusion and about the LGBTQ community that have done this type of outreach. So we'll be piggybacking off of their efforts, and it won't be reaching out church by church because a lot of these churches are all connected to each other and there are networks that exist already. We are also bringing on partners to work with us, like the Trevor Project and the Reformation Project, and hopefully GLAD and others who will help us build.
Okay. So it's all about finding strong partners. Just wanted to kind of, bring that out there, you guys, because for those of you who may be thinking about impact campaigns, or you attend an event within one and are just like kind of curious, I don't think we've spoken very much about that during the series, and it's really key. I mean, for any film, right? But I mean, you would just call it like a campaign if it was just for any film that might be other than that, which is very purposeful. But the impact campaign scenario is one that I don't really hear discussed very much. And how can you do that more effectively? How can you differentiate from others that are out there? And I just thought I would take the opportunity and ask the Fab Dorisha, a little bit about that. But yeah, so
I don't think it's appropriate for every film per se, every documentary. Some are more. It works better for some films.
Absolutely. But I love that the idea of maybe not doing everything yourself, right? With everything, but to partner with those who can use this and take it as a vehicle and just boom, because they're already trying to do something and this can just fit into it. So I think the two kind of things together can really amplify, and that's great. Well, I wish you continued success on all of this, Dorisha. Thank you for taking the time. I hope the weather's a little bit better there in Atlanta than it is right here in New York right now, because it's mad raining and cloudy. So
that's beautiful here. You should come down.
I haven't been to Atlanta in a minute, too. So, yes, I will have to. So much is always happening in Atlanta, but I feel even more with the film community, or just the film industry, I should say, with UTA having new offices there, another studio popping up there. I feel like a lot happens, but they don't really talk about it a lot, I don't know why, but I just kind of feel like it's like, taken for granted with all the filmmakers and the film community in Atlanta, but it's not really broadcast that much. Like I said, even when UTA opened the new office, I don't know, I saw a couple of articles about it in, I guess, Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and that was kind of it. But I mean, a major agency, to my knowledge, not in recent times, has ever really done that. Yeah. And that should really set the tone for maybe, hopefully, increased inclusion, representation of people. You know what I mean? That it's not just like, oh, they have an office there now. It's the ripple effect. Yeah. So yeah, Atlanta is holding it down and expanding and progressing.
It's on the come up. Atlanta's on the come up.
Yes, as always. Yeah. All right, Dorisha. Well, you have a great rest of the day there. And again, thank you so much for taking the time. And you guys, I hope that you have enjoyed watching this interview. Do try and check out Mama Bears through all the wonderful effort that's been put into the website. And just keep your eyes open for more that we will be bringing you right here through the Inside series for Filmio. I am Lauren Delisa Coleman. Thank you so much for watching.
Bye.